Hello, this is Mr. Wise, and I'm here to talk with you about a few things in Python here. So, number one, I have a few resources here, and we'll be going through these. I have some lessons that we'll be doing in Google Docs. So, Python, one of the sources that I really like for Python is python.org, and there's another one, w3schools.com, that we commonly use for our web design jQuery class. So, they have a lot of great Python stuff here too. I'd like to talk to you first about tuples and then about dictionaries. So first of all here, we'll look through these tuples. What these are, we have some comma separated values saved under a variable. So in this case, under fruits, it would save in apple, and then because of this comma, banana is a distinct value, and then another comma in cherry. So we can do multiples of these. For instance, if I want to come over here, let me make this a little larger for the screen recording. All right, so I could say class, and then I have in quotation marks my first value, the comma, and then my seconds, let's say geography, and perhaps another. So let's say art 1. Now I can do a few things with this here. First of all, let's go ahead and see what values are in here. So you can use a print command, parentheses. Now, of course, if you use quotation marks, you're going to print a string. It will write out exactly what you say. So if I said like string number 1, it's going to go ahead and print that down here. Okay, so one mistake I made, I accidentally used a protected variable there. So class list, this should work for us. So this says string number because I'm telling it to specifically say string number. Before that, usually I don't use any variable here that's already used by Python, but here a class is something that already exists. So just a debugging tip for you when you're going through, make sure you don't use a protected word. Okay, so let's go ahead and take the quotation marks off of this. And instead, we're going to print this variable. And let's see what it says. Class list. Okay, so we'll go ahead and play this. Now, we're not telling it to go through each value on its own, so it's going to put them together, right? Now, there's some other things we could do. We have some loops that we could use, like for I. And I is an index. It's a variable that's going to stand in for this, because when we're looking at things that use some sort of array-like object in Python, usually the first thing is 0, and then 1, and then 2. So instead of being 1, 2, 3, it's 0, 1, 2. So if I were to put something like print class list, and then tell it specifically which of those indexes, oops, that should be square brackets, which index item to use. Okay, this, until this is finished, this can cause an error, so let's get rid of that for now. All right, so geography, it's still printing the class list here, the entire thing, but here we're giving it an index number. So that's 0, this is 1, so we're telling it to print the second value. All right, and the next thing we need to do, okay. So next we can go in here and let's try and grab every individual value. So let's say for I, that index, in range I. Now, because we're doing a block of code here, we're going to indent this in Python and tell it what to do. So we want it to print our class list I. And so what this is doing here, okay, so what this is doing here is it's going to start with 0. For 0 in this range of I, it is going to print class list 0. So the first one, then it's going to loop back and do the second one. Now, for certain things, we'd have to put in a length here. So it knows the length, right? So if you go ahead and say this, it's going to say, hey, this is not defined. So what if we were to say the length of class list? Okay, so now it has listed out each of these. Make sure this is off here. Okay, so this is going through, it's making what we call a loop. It is saying for I in range, and that's finding the length of this tuple here. So that length is 1, 2, 3 items, and it's 0, 1, 2 as far as their index, right? So it's saying for this index in the range and the total length, since we have 3 items here, it's going to count up to 3 basically, and do this block of code that many times. So it's going to print the class list for I. And so this variable is changing. The first time it goes through, it's going to start with 0. So 0 of length 3, and it will print class list 0, which is the first item. Then we'll go back through and say for 1 in the length of 3, print class list 1, which is the second value. And then for 2 in range 3, it's going to print your index of 2, which is R1, right? Another cool thing we can do with this is this idea of unpacking. So if I wanted to say something like parenthesis, period 1, oops, period 2, period 3, and then we could go through and do equals class list. So then if we put print period 1, print period 2, and then print period 3, and I need to get my quotation marks there. Okay, let's see what happens now. Okay, so it is actually printing our classes in order from these new variables.